Okay, so here's the equation of the line. Remember how this works. This is like y hat equals a plus bx. So we're going to kind of investigate kind of how these two numbers work for us, the 28 and the 6, the a and the b, the y-intercept and the slope. So what they gave us here is they gave us a table. This is number 2. They gave us a table and they said, okay, let's plug in. Let's say if a cereal had 0 grams of protein, what would the predicted rating be? If we use the equation of the line, what would we predict that the rating is? Well, we would do 28 plus 6 times 0 in this case. We plug in 0 for x. And so that would be 28 equals 6 plus 6 times 0, so that would be 28 plus 0, so it would be 28. And they already did 1 and 2 for us, so let's plug in 3. If we plug in 3, that would be 28 plus 6 times 3 is 18, so that's, what's that, 46? Or 6 times 3 is, yeah. Yeah, isn't that right? Yeah, whatever. But yeah, so it'll be 46. And then if we plug in 5, 28, 6 times 5 is 30, so that would be 58. Okay. So this is we increase the amount of protein by 1 every time, and as we saw how our predicted rating kind of changed like this. Now let's take a little closer look at these values over here. From 28 to 34, what was the difference there? How did we go from here to here? What was the change? It was a plus 6. From here to here, plus 6. From here to here, plus 6. Plus 6, plus 6. Okay? Does that 6 look familiar? There it is. Alright, the slope. Okay? This plus 6 is the same as the slope. What the slope tells us is that as we increase the x value by 1, so if I go from 0 grams of protein to 1 gram of protein, my predicted rating will increase by 6 every time. I went from 1 to 2, I increased by 1 value. And I went from 34 to 40, I increased by 6. Every time I increase by 1, I increase by 1 gram of protein, I increase by 6 rating points over here. Right? That's the significance of the slope. And the thing is, I'm increasing by it because we had plus 6. Remember, this was a positive relationship. If it was a negative relationship, it would be a minus, and that would be decreasing every time. But so that's how the slope works. The slope works where if you increase x by 1, you increase the y, or the predicted variable, whatever we're getting, by whatever the slope is. So I go up 1 here, I change this by the slope. Either positive or negative, depending which way we're going. Okay, that's how the slope works. Okay, now this value, the 28, that's like this first row right here. The first row is this 0, 28. Now that would be a situation where if we had a cereal that had no protein at all, so 0 grams of protein. If we had no protein, then we would have a rating of 28. That's kind of, because we plug in a 0, this is sometimes referred to, the 28 is sometimes referred to as the initial value. So it's called the initial value, because that's when you plug in a 0. The line kind of starts from right there. And so that's kind of what's going on with that. So that would be if we had a cereal with 0 grams of protein. And that kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense for us to have a cereal that would have 0 grams of protein in it. But it doesn't always make sense. Let's take a look at another situation where things may not make all that much sense. Let's go ahead and look at 4 through 6. All right, 4 through 6 look like this. What I would ask is just go ahead and pause right now, guys, and try out 4 through 6, and then come back here and we'll review and kind of see what we got. Okay, so pause. Okay, we're back. Okay, so now we're back. Okay, so here we go. So now we're looking at this equation. So this is our equation for this time. We're revisiting an old situation we had with the forearm length right here and the height right here. The idea is if we know a person's forearm length, we could predict how tall they're going to be because they kind of follow this line a little bit. All right, so the line would go somewhere in the middle here. They give us the equation of the line. They didn't draw it for us, but they give us the equation of the line right here. Y hat is 39 plus 2.7x. Remember, the x is the forearm length. This is the x value, the forearm length, and the height would be the y hat. Okay, so we plug in the forearm length here, and we get a predicted height here. So what they ask us is this: what does the 2.7 mean in this? Right? There's a 2.7 right here. 2.7 is the slope, remember? And what this tells us is if we increase the person's forearm length by 1, then we'll increase their height by 2.7. That's the significance of the slope. Every time we increase forearm length by 1, then height increases by 2.7 inches. That is the significance of the slope. We'll try to get used to saying it in that way. Okay, and that's the significance of slope. As this increases by 1, this increases by whatever the slope is. Okay. Okay, what's the significance of the 39? The 39 would be if we had a person who had a forearm length of 0. So if we had 0 for x, so if we had a forearm length of 0, they would be 39 inches tall. And that would be the initial value. All right. So if we had a 0-inch forearm, we have a 39-inch tall person. Now they go ahead and say that does that 39 make sense? Does it make sense to talk about the initial value? And in this scenario, not really. It doesn't really make sense because we wouldn't have a person who has a 0-inch forearm. That doesn't really make any sense. So can you have a 0-inch forearm? No. So initial value doesn't really make sense in this case. Now with the protein, you could have a cereal that we could have a cereal that has 0 grams of protein. That could happen, but it would have a pretty bad rating, which it did. The rating was like 28. And so in that scenario, it did make sense. Here, doesn't really make sense. But it can kind of go both ways. You can kind of look at the context and see what's going on. Last one. As your forearm increases, if your forearm increases by 4 inches, then how much would your height increase? They didn't really give us a place to start. They didn't say you went from having an 8-inch forearm to a 12-inch forearm. They didn't really do that. But it doesn't really matter because if you think about it, for every time you increase 1 inch, and remember what the slope was all about. That means every time you increase 1 inch, you increase height 2.7 inches. So for every inch you increase, you will increase height by 2.7. So here we have 4 inches of increase of forearm length. So we'll have 2.7 4 times. We'll add 2.7 4 times. So we'll do 4 times 2.7 and we'll get whatever that is. What is that? 5.4. So 10.8. So we'll have 10.8 inches. So there'll be a 10.8 increase in height if you had a 4-inch increase in your forearm. Because for every inch of forearm, we went up 1 inch of forearm, well then that's 2.7 of height. For every inch. So 2.7 inches of height per 1 inch of forearm. And that's where we get the 10.8 inches increase. And that's from no matter what starting point. So if we start off at 10 inches of forearm and you went to 14, then hey, then you would go from whatever height that was to whatever the other height was. But you know that the difference from one to the other would be of 10.8 inches because it went 2.7 4 times. Okay? All right, so take that, run with it, and let's see how that works. Okay?